Rain poured heavily outside the bright supermarket windows, blurring the world into streaks of silver and light. Inside, the aisles buzzed with chatter, the sound of shopping carts clattering and beeping scanners filling the air. For most people, it was an ordinary day. But for one little girl named Lily, it felt like the world was crashing around her. The lights above flickered with a faint hum, every sound sharpened and painful in her ears. The rustle of bags, the sharp cries of children, the static of the intercom, it all collided into an unbearable storm. She clutched her stuffed fox tightly to her chest, her fingers trembling, her small face scrunched in distress. People around her began to stare as she whimpered, then suddenly covered her ears and cried out, dropping to her knees on the cold tile floor. Some shoppers slowed down, whispering, unsure what to do. A mother nearby frowned, pulling her child away, while others pretended not to notice. The noise, the confusion, it was too much. Lily rocked slightly, her breathing fast and shallow, tears streaking her cheeks as her small voice cracked through her sobs. "Make it stop. Please make it stop." Behind one of the freezers, a young woman named Elena looked up from stacking boxes. She had noticed the little girl before, quiet, always holding that same toy fox, walking carefully beside a tall man in a suit. But now, seeing her crumble, something inside Elena stirred. She dropped what she was doing and hurried over, kneeling beside the girl. "Hey, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice calm and warm despite the chaos. "It's okay, you're safe. I'm right here." Lily didn't respond at first, her hands still clamped tightly over her ears. Elena gently placed her hand on the girl's shoulder, careful not to startle her. "It's too loud, isn't it?" she murmured. "Let's make it a little quieter, okay?" She motioned to a coworker to lower the store's background music, then turned off the flickering light above them. The atmosphere softened just enough for Lily's breathing to ease a little. Elena pulled a small folded napkin from her apron pocket and offered it to her. "You can hold this if it helps," she whispered. Though Lily didn't take it, she just stared at the floor, still shaking. Elena didn't rush her. She simply stayed beside her, talking softly about nothing and everything. The way the rain sounded outside, how her fox must be very brave, how sometimes the world gets too noisy but it always calms down again. Slowly, Lily's cries began to quiet. Her grip on the fox loosened a little. Elena smiled faintly, relieved. "There you go, sweetheart," she said gently. "You're doing so well." People nearby began to relax too, watching quietly as the young employee helped the girl find her calm again. Elena didn't notice the stares, the murmurs, or even her manager frowning from a distance. Her focus was entirely on the frightened child before her. And for that brief, fragile moment, the chaos of the store faded away, replaced by something simple but powerful, kindness in its purest form. By the time Lily finally began to calm down, the store had fallen into an uneasy hush. The hum of the refrigerators and the muffled sound of rain outside filled the silence. Elena stayed crouched beside her, her knees aching, but she didn't move. She kept her voice soft and steady, matching her breathing with Lily's until the child's small sobs turned into hiccups. Slowly, Lily looked up, her blue eyes glassy with tears, clutching the worn-out fox to her chest like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. "You're safe now," Elena said, brushing a loose strand of hair from Lily's forehead. "You did really well." A few feet away, the store manager stormed out from behind the customer service counter. His expression was tight with frustration, his eyes darting to the growing number of onlookers. "Elena!" he snapped, his voice slicing through the fragile calm. "What do you think you're doing?" Elena stood up slowly, shielding Lily instinctively. She was having a meltdown," she said carefully, trying to keep her tone polite. "I was just helping her calm down. The noise was too much for her." The manager crossed his arms, frowning deeply. "Helping customers isn't your job. You're supposed to be stocking shelves, not playing babysitter." His words came out cold and sharp, echoing down the aisle. "She's just a child," Elena replied softly, her voice trembling slightly. She was scared, but the manager wasn't listening. He was already looking at the scattered boxes near the freezer section, the aisle half-stocked and the people still staring. "We can't have scenes like this," he said. "You're causing a disruption." Before Elena could answer, a low, commanding voice spoke from behind him. "No, she isn't." The crowd turned. A tall man in a dark suit stood at the end of the aisle, rain still glistening on his shoulders, his eyes fixed on the little girl. He moved quickly but gracefully, his face tightening as he saw Lily trembling. "Lily," he said softly, his voice breaking just slightly. The girl's head snapped up and she let out a choked sound, a mix of relief and exhaustion. "Daddy," she whispered. The man's expression shattered. He knelt and opened his arms, and Lily ran into them, pressing her face into his chest, clutching the stuffed fox between them. He held her tightly, his jaw clenched as he looked over her head at Elena, and then at the manager. The man's presence was commanding, his tailored suit hinting at wealth and authority, but right now there was something else in his eyes. Something fierce and protective. "I'm so sorry," Elena murmured, stepping back, unsure if she should even be there. She needed someone. But before she could say more, the manager cut in again. "Sir, I apologize for the disturbance," he said hastily. "This employee was doing her job," the man interrupted, his voice calm but dangerous, "and doing it better than most people I've ever seen." The manager blinked, caught off guard. "Sir, She helped my daughter when no one else did," the man said quietly, running a hand over Lily's hair as she held onto him tightly. "That's not a disturbance. That's decency." For a moment, the store fell silent again. The manager opened his mouth to argue, but something in the man's eyes made him stop. There was power in his gaze, quiet and unyielding, the kind that didn't need to shout to command respect. Elena looked between them, unsure what to do. Her hands shook slightly as she tried to steady her breath. She hadn't known who the little girl's father was, hadn't realized she'd just knelt on the cold floor to help the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the city. But as she watched him hold his trembling child, she didn't see a CEO. She just saw a father, terrified, grateful, and utterly human. And in that instant, though she didn't know it yet, her life was about to change completely. The rain hadn't stopped when Elena was called into the manager's office later that evening. Her apron was damp, her hands still trembling slightly as she stood in front of the cheap wooden desk. The manager didn't even look up when she entered. He just kept typing, the clicking of his keyboard filling the silence. Finally, he leaned back and crossed his arms. "Elena, I've had complaints about you stepping out of your assigned section again," he said flatly. "And what happened earlier was completely unacceptable." Her stomach dropped. "Unacceptable?" she repeated softly. "Sir, she was having a panic attack. She needed help." "That's not your problem," he snapped. "You're not a babysitter, you're an employee. You don't stop your work because some kid starts crying." Elena's chest tightened. She bit her lip to keep from saying something she might regret. "If it were your child, you'd understand," she said quietly. The manager's expression hardened. "You're done here," he said, standing abruptly. "Hand in your badge." "You're fired." For a moment she just stood there, frozen. Fired. The word hit her like a wave of cold water. Her rent was already overdue. Her mother's medication barely covered. She wanted to argue, to plead, but she knew it wouldn't matter. The manager had made up his mind the moment he saw her kneeling on that floor. Her throat burned as she turned in her badge and walked out of the office, the sound of her own footsteps echoing in her ears. Outside, the rain had turned to a steady drizzle, and the parking lot shimmered with reflections of the neon lights. She stood there for a moment, pulling her thin jacket closer around her, feeling the weight of exhaustion and defeat pressing down on her shoulders. When she finally reached her small apartment, everything felt heavier. The silence, the flickering lamp, the emptiness of the room. She sank onto her worn couch and stared at her hands. Helping that little girl had felt right. It was right. And yet it had cost her everything. The next morning, a knock at her door startled her awake. She blinked, disoriented, her eyes swollen from crying. No one ever came to her place. She hesitated before opening it and froze. Standing in the hallway framed by the morning light was the man from the store. He was wearing a dark suit again, his expression unreadable but his eyes soft with something that looked like guilt. "Elena, right?" he said quietly. She nodded, unsure of what to say. You're Lily's father." He gave a small nod. "I am. I'm sorry to show up unannounced, but I needed to talk to you." Elena's pulse quickened. "Is she okay?" He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "She's better. She wouldn't stop talking about the lady who helped her. She called you her guardian angel." Elena's throat tightened. "I'm just glad she's all right," she said softly. He looked down for a moment as if gathering his words. "I heard what happened after I left the store," he said. "That you were fired." Elena forced a small, tired smile. It's okay. I'll find something else. But he shook his head slowly. No, it's not okay. There was something in his tone, firm but weighted with emotion, that made her look up. He met her eyes, and for a moment she saw not the polished CEO who had commanded the room, but a man who was genuinely remorseful. You did something most people wouldn't have, he said. You showed kindness when everyone else stood back. And it cost you your job. He took a step closer, his voice softening. I can't let that go unanswered. Elena blinked, confused. What do you mean? He hesitated, then smiled slightly. I'm the CEO of the company that owns that supermarket chain, he said, and I'd like to offer you a new job. The words didn't register right away. She stared at him, stunned, her mouth parting in disbelief. A new job? He nodded. Yes? Something more fitting for someone with your heart. Elena felt tears sting her eyes, not because of the offer itself, but because for the first time in a long while, someone had seen her. Not as a struggling worker, not as another face in the crowd, but as a person who mattered. And as the morning sun filtered through the hallway window, casting light over both of them, she realized that maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something far bigger than either of them had expected. Elena stood frozen for a few seconds after hearing his words, her mind trying to catch up with what he had just said. A job offer from him? From the same man who owned the company that had fired her less than 24 hours ago? It didn't feel real. She blinked, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or shut the door and pretend this was all some strange dream. I don't understand, she whispered finally, her voice trembling. Why would you offer me a job? I was just a cashier. The man's expression softened, his eyes filled with something deeper than sympathy. Respect. Because, Elena, the world doesn't need more people who follow rules blindly. It needs people who care. You saw a child in distress and you acted. That takes courage and compassion, two things money can't buy. Elena felt her throat tighten again. She looked down, fiddling with the hem of her sleeve. But I don't have the qualifications for anything important. I barely made it through school. He smiled faintly, a warmth in his voice now. I don't care about degrees or fancy titles. I care about integrity. And my daughter trusts you. That means more to me than any resume. For a long moment, silence hung between them. The sound of distant rain tapping on the window filled the space, soft but steady. Then from behind him came a familiar little voice. Daddy, is that her? Elena looked past him and saw the little girl from the store, Lily, peeking around his leg, holding the same stuffed fox close to her chest. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw Elena, and without hesitation she ran forward, wrapping her tiny arms around Elena's knees. You came back, Lily exclaimed, her voice bright and full of innocent joy. Elena crouched down, her hands trembling as she brushed a strand of hair from the child's face. Hey, sweetheart, she said softly. I'm so glad you're okay. Lily grinned up at her, completely unaware of the tension and uncertainty that hung in the air. Daddy said you're a hero. You helped me when everyone else didn't. Elena looked up at him, her eyes glistening. He met her gaze, something unspoken passing between them, something honest and fragile. I'd like you to come work for me personally, he said quietly. As my daughter's caretaker, someone she can feel safe with. Her heart skipped a beat. You want me to take care of her? He nodded. It's not just a job. It's a position of trust. Lily doesn't connect easily with people, but she connected with you instantly. Elena hesitated, looking at the little girl still holding on to her. It felt too good to be true. For so long she'd been fighting just to survive, to keep the lights on, to put food on the table, to hold herself together after every rejection. And now, here was this man offering her something she never expected. Stability, respect, and maybe even purpose. I don't know what to say, she whispered, her voice breaking. Say yes, he said gently, smiling now. You've already done the hard part. You've earned it. Lily tugged on her sleeve, eyes wide and hopeful. Please stay with us, she said. Elena looked from the child to the father, her vision blurring as tears filled her eyes. She nodded slowly, a shaky smile forming on her lips. Okay, she said. I'll do it. The relief on his face was subtle but real. He extended his hand and she took it. It was warm, firm, and steady, the kind of handshake that told her he meant every word. As they stood there in the soft glow of the morning light, something shifted in Elena's heart. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small or invisible. She felt seen, needed, and as Lily hugged her again, Elena knew that this unexpected turn of fate was the moment her life began to change forever. The morning sunlight streamed softly through the tall windows of the CEO's private estate, filling the space with warmth and quiet promise. Elena stood in the spacious living room, still half in disbelief that she was there at all. Everything felt unreal. The polished marble floors, the faint scent of coffee drifting from the kitchen, the gentle hum of peace that surrounded this place. After so many nights of uncertainty and exhaustion, it felt like stepping into another world. Lily sat cross-legged on the plush carpet, building towers out of colorful wooden blocks. She looked up when she saw Elena enter and grinned brightly. "Miss Elena."
"You're here."
Elena smiled, kneeling beside her. "I told you I'd come, didn't I?" The little girl's face glowed. "Daddy said you'd take care of me now. Like my friend." Elena's heart melted at that word, friend. She brushed Lily's hair gently, helping her balance the next block. "That's right, sweetheart. I'll be your friend always." As they played, Elena caught sight of the man, Mr. Hayes, standing by the doorway watching them quietly. The same calm authority that had once intimidated her now seemed softer, more human. There was a faint smile on his face, the kind a parent wears when they see their child happy for the first time in a long while. He approached, hands in his pockets, his tone quiet but filled with warmth. "She hasn't laughed like that in months," he said. "You've done more for her in a day than anyone has in years." Elena looked up, surprised. "She's a wonderful little girl. She just needed someone to listen." He nodded slowly. That's something most adults forget how to do. There was a pause, gentle, comfortable, the kind that doesn't need to be filled with words. Then he exhaled, as if letting go of something heavy. "I've been buried in work for so long I barely saw what was right in front of me. My daughter, she lost her mother young, and I thought giving her everything money could buy would make it easier." He looked down, his voice softer now. "But I was wrong." Elena's chest tightened. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes, not the kind that comes from sleepless nights or long meetings, but from guilt, from loneliness. She understood that feeling far too well. "She doesn't need perfection," Elena said quietly. "She just needs you." He met her gaze, something in his expression shifting. "And maybe she needs you too." For a moment, the air between them felt fragile but full of meaning. Two people who'd been broken in different ways, drawn together by a child's laughter and a second chance. Days turned into weeks. Elena became part of their daily rhythm. Morning breakfast filled with giggles, afternoons spent drawing, quiet evenings where Lily fell asleep in her lap while the fire crackled in the hearth. One evening, as snow began to fall again outside, Elena stepped onto the balcony. She looked up at the sky, her breath visible in the cold air. It felt almost poetic, how she'd once stood in the freezing dark, uncertain if she'd ever find a place to belong. And now here she was, surrounded by warmth, love, and a strange new hope. Behind her, the door creaked softly. Mr. Hayes stepped out, holding 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "Thought you could use this," he said with a small smile. She accepted it, their fingers brushing briefly. "Thank you," she murmured. They stood there in silence, watching the snow fall, the world quiet and peaceful. And in that stillness, something wordless passed between them, not love yet, but the beginning of it. A connection built not from power or wealth, but kindness, gratitude, and the miracle of being seen when you've spent so long invisible. Elena looked back at the house, where Lily's laughter echoed faintly down the hall, and then at the man beside her. For the first time in her life, she felt not just safe, but home.